Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar titled Understanding Machine Learning and Analytics for vSphere Capacity and Performance. This webinar is brought to you by ScienceIQ, who offers a great new approach to virtual infrastructure performance and capacity management. My name is David Davis, and I'll be your moderator for the event. This event is brought to you by Actual Tech Media and ScienceIQ. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today in our inaugural Data Center Innovations webinar series. So we've got a lot of exciting things to talk about. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we jump too much into it, I want to briefly tell you what this Data Center Innovators series is about. At Actual Tech IO, we've been searching for companies out there who are doing the most innovative things in the data center and in cloud computing and virtualization. And we know that the technology market is clouded and confusing for IT professionals out there. And so that's why we started this series. And I just wanted to briefly point out that this series is the first in what will soon to be hopefully a long series of webinars, ebooks, and a lot of blog content around innovative companies like what ScienceIQ is doing and is here to demonstrate for us today. So my name is David Davis again, and I'll be the moderator for the event. I'm a 6-time VMware vExpert, a video training author from pluralsight.com, and I also worked in the data center for over 15 years where we implemented virtualization and consolidated our servers. And that was really where I fell in love with the technology and the solution. And since then, I've been learning about more and more data center technology, writing, speaking, and blogging, and working with wonderful companies like we have on the call today, ScienceIQ. And I'm especially excited about this product and this company because I actually saw this product when it was first just a wireframe diagram sketch of what the interface might look like, and I've seen it mature and grow over time as it's being built and improved upon. So it's a really exciting launch today. In fact, this is the first launch, first public demonstration of the ScienceIQ product prior to their big demonstration at VMworld in just a couple weeks. So a very exciting webinar today. I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Tony DeMarco, who is the Director of Field Engineering at ScienceIQ. So now that you know who we are, let's go ahead and jump into it here and tell you a little bit about what you're going to learn today. I'll talk briefly about the vSphere administrator challenges and solutions that admins out there, are facing on a daily basis. They have, complex infrastructures, complex applications. It's difficult to prevent problems before they happen. When problems do happen, it's very challenging to identify the root cause and identify it, very quickly. They have a lot of wasted resources. They need to recoup costs and use their infrastructure efficiently. I mean, that's what virtualization, really promised us, was that we could use our infrastructure efficiently, and it doesn't always happen today. We need smart tools to help us do it. We're going to talk about machine learning, what it is and how it can help you, and we'll talk about what virtual machines and applications need SSD caching and how to identify those. I think that's a big challenge. There's a lot of new SSD caching solutions out there, including that available in VMware vSphere, but it's tough to know which solution do I choose and which virtual machines need it and what kind of caching do they need. And then finally, we'll talk about how to prevent problems before they happen and quickly solve them if they do. So first, a little bit of background. How did we get here today? If you're like me, most of us had physical servers. We decided to add a hypervisor like VMware vSphere. We added this virtualization layer, which made things so much more efficient. It was exciting and powerful and made us, really empowered, admins. And it also was done to help us maximize our data center resources and help us to really drive up the utilization on our physical servers and of our storage infrastructure. And in many cases, that's a good thing because you want to maximize that very expensive investment, in the data center. But on the other hand, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to push it, over the limit and have poor application performance or experience bottlenecks. So, we assigned and we attempted to manage resources for our virtual machines. How many CPUs and how much memory does a VM need? How much space do we allocate it? And what type of RAID striping and storage and I/O, of footprint does it require? And when we started using virtualization, instead of having one SAN LUN per physical host and per application, typically, we ended up with one SAN LUN in many cases for many virtual machines. Could be 10, 20, 50, maybe more, all in a single SAN LUN. And because of that, we created this I/O blender effect, which Stephen Foskett of Tech Field Day, I believe, it actually invented the term. What it means is that because the applications don't have a dedicated storage pathway and a dedicated storage set of disks for a particular application, different types of I/O, random I/O and sequential I/O and write I/O are all mixed up. So the I/O blender effect, the net result is that it causes latency for your applications, and that's why so many companies are pushing to implement SSD caching. So we have these complex infrastructures. Host and CPU are being pushed to the limits. Virtual machines are moving from host to host dynamically. We have VM sprawl. We can click and deploy a new VM in just seconds, right? But there's complex relationships between our applications and our VMs. And there's latency sensitive applications out there and latency sensitive users, right? I'm sure that many of you have lots of latency sensitive users. And then we tend to add more and more, tier one applications, VDI, and critical applications, over time. So we have these complex infrastructures, and at the same time, we have very limited visibility into those infrastructures. Our current tools, and many of them were designed just for standalone hosts, for physical servers, or just to manage, let's say, the storage. Many admins out there, they have one tool for CPU memory and local disk. They have another tool for network management, another tool for SAN management. And you've got these different groups. You have different silos for management, and you end up with a lot of finger pointing. So I'm sure you've experienced that. It's something I've experienced many times being an IT manager. Then you have alert storms. So there's a problem. You get 100 alerts about something wrong out there. And then you have to struggle to find the problem. So it's difficult to find the root cause. And lots of us, we don't have any application metrics. We don't have an application performance, monitoring tool of any kind, really. And because of that, when we make improvements to the infrastructure, we don't know if we've really improved application performance or if we've negatively, hurt application performance. So many application performance metrics that vSphere admins are using are really just a gut feel. So you might have an end user that comes and says, hey, it's slower today than it was yesterday. Can you fix it? And you say, yeah, let me see if I can tweak something and make it faster. So we don't have exact application metrics in most cases for our most critical applications. And that's really what we need, to make smart decisions in the data center. And then another problem here is troubleshooting trial and error. There's too much troubleshooting going on really in the dark, where we start off, with a problem like, based on past experience, things, the problem in the past was always the storage, so it's probably the storage this time, and that's what we'll look at first, right? We're just troubleshooting in the dark. We're just guessing, based on our past experiences, or our past troubleshooting processes. And this is really inefficient. It's stressful. It causes a lot of unneeded downtime and unneeded, poor application performance for our end users. And even worse, this type of thing could be easily resolved if we just had the right tool that could very quickly identify, the problem. Is it storage? Is it memory? Is it CPU? Is it the network? Where exactly is the bottleneck? We need to be able to identify those bottlenecks quickly, and even better, hopefully be able to prevent those bottlenecks before they happen. So, all this, as you might imagine, results in lengthy, painful, costly troubleshooting processes for your company's most business critical applications. And that equates to, downtime, slow application performance, unhappy users, makes the IT group, look bad, makes us as, vSphere administrators look bad. And for the company, it equates to real dollar revenue lost in many cases. If you have, say, a point of sale system or a transaction system or an online e-commerce system, if those applications are running slow or they're down, you've lost real business. And you've also wasted a lot of resources in the company, and in many cases even lost, some form of customer loyalty. So companies, are smart to try to virtualize and consolidate, but they also have to be very very careful when pushing that consolidation to the limits, because it can negatively affect application performance, and it's really just a snowball, effect from there. So, think about it for a minute. How much time and money are wasted out there with finger pointing between different groups in IT, maybe between the storage group and the server group, or the vSphere admin and the network admin, and how much time is wasted and money is wasted, on the end user side as well when all these things are going on. So we in IT need to get out of our kind of glass house and look at all the users. They just need their applications to work, and they need them to respond well and not have latency so that they can do the job and do it quickly, right? So before we jump into solutions for vSphere administrators and our all-new product from Sios, I've got 3 quick poll questions here that I'd like to ask you, just so we can get to know our audience a little bit more. The first one is just about what virtualization platform you're using. This is an easy one, right? Are you using VMware vSphere, Hyper-V, or are you using some form of public cloud, Azure, AWS, or some other hypervisor? So let me give you a second to answer that poll question there. And we really appreciate you answering the polls. Don't forget, we've got a $300 Amazon gift card at the end of the webinar here. And notice that this is a multi-select question. So you might be using VMware vSphere and Amazon Web Services, for example. All right, we've got most of the audience out there voting. I really appreciate that. Let me go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And as you can see, wow, VMware vSphere is the overwhelming winner, 91% out there, which is actually really good, especially for this webinar, because the tool that we're talking about today is primarily a VMware vSphere tool at this time. So let me hide those results, and then just 2 more questions. This is a quick yes or no. Is it challenging to identify the root cause of the problems in your data center? And to me, this is, usually an easy one, unless you have a small infrastructure. I think small, simple infrastructures typically don't have as many problems identifying root cause. So we've got most of the audience voting. Let me share the results. So 85% say yes, it is tough to identify the root cause. And what we might add on to that question is it tough to identify the root cause quickly and within a reasonable amount of time for your company? And then last question here, and again, a quick yes, no, or considering it. Are you using SSD host-based caching to improve the performance of your virtual machines? Is this something you're using at this time, or are you considering it? All right, we've got most of the audience voting, and you can see a good spread there. 27% say yes, 34% not using it, and 39% considering it. So very cool. I appreciate that. And with that, let's go ahead and get on. I've got a couple slides here to talk about solutions, and then we're going to talk more specifically about today's solution, our featured solution from Sios. So what vSphere admins need, in my opinion, is smarter tools that help them understand complex virtual infrastructures and tools that recognize all the layers. I mean, if a tool only sees vCenter, you have a relatively limited view. So the greater view you can get from your tool, if it can recognize the virtual network, if it can recognize even the physical network and physical storage, the more and dive into applications, the more layers it can recognize, the better off you are. And then they need smarter tools with machine learning that don't just set off alert storms, tools that can quickly identify the root cause of a problem. They also need smarter tools that can help them to identify and improve application performance by identifying the areas where storage IO throughput, for example, could be a bottleneck and could be improved by using storage caching. So tools, hopefully, that give them some insight, hopefully, to the applications, to allow them to make intelligent decisions, and tools to help them maximize the resources that they have in the infrastructure. Of course, you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions potentially in data center infrastructure, and you need to make sure and be able to tell the financial people at your company that yes, this is a solid investment. We are maximizing every CPU megahertz and every megabyte of RAM and every IO, every IOP we can get out of the storage, we are maximizing for the company. So they need tools to help them prove that and help them find waste if there is waste, in the infrastructure. So that's my take on the challenges the vSphere admins are facing and some of the solutions or the types of solutions that they should be looking for. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tony DeMarco from ScienceIQ to talk about their brand new product for IT operations analytics when it comes to virtualized environments. Tony?
Excellent. Thanks, David, and hello, everyone. So as David mentioned, my name is Tony DeMarco. I'm the Director of Field Engineering here at ScienceIQ. So let me go ahead and share out my screen. I'm going to take presenter control here, and we'll take you through and talk about our new product called ScienceIQ. So I'm sharing out my desktop here, and here we go. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about a new solution from ScienceIQ. It's called ScienceIQ, as you can see here up on the screen. And ScienceIQ is a machine learning-based analytics platform. What it does is it learns infrastructure behaviors and patterns and provides answers to difficult problems in complex VMware deployments. In today's session, what I'm going to be covering is I'm going to give you a brief overview of the ScienceIQ platform and product. And then I'm going to jump in and spend most of my time actually giving you a live demonstration and showing you how this works in real time. So let's jump ahead here. So as I mentioned, what ScienceIQ does, is it's a product that it pulls and consolidates data from many different, existing data sources. So we're continuously analyzing, not just a handful of data points from a handful of sources, but we're looking at hundreds of thousands of data points in real time, and this is across compute, it's across network, storage, and even up into the application layer. And that whole time we're leveraging machine learning analytics to automatically learn what quote unquote normal behavior is in your environment. And to take that a step further, when it identifies anomalies, it will identify problems in real time. It'll tell you what the root cause of the issue is, who's impacted by it, and things like that. And we'll get into these details as we make progress in our session here today. What's powerful about ScienceIQ is because of the machine learning, analytics that just happens automatically. This means that you don't have to set any, baselines. The product just learns as it goes. It uses that analysis to provide, actionable insights and intelligence about your environment on how to. Well, first of all, it tells you what the issue is when you might not have, known that there was an issue to begin with or a potential issue, but it also tells you, what can be done. It makes recommendations on how you can resolve the issue, and all of this with a single click, as you'll see here coming up shortly. So, oftentimes, the sheer size and complexity of a virtual environment, makes it really difficult to get to the bottom of the issue. We're talking about multiple virtual machines, hosts, data stores, applications, all of these different, layers of the stack are generating vast amounts of data, and that all needs to be analyzed and processed. But most importantly, this data needs to be analyzed not just as individual objects, but really as a whole, taking into account, not just the data points associated with these objects, but the complex relationships between all of these objects. And of course, to make things more complex, in most virtual environments, things are very dynamic. Guests are being added, removed, they're being vMotioned from host to host. So it's not static. So, if we just pause for a moment and take a look at the title of this slide, too much data, not enough insight. So, there's no question that the data is out there. You can pull logs from just about any type of device out there and a software application, but the problem is that there's too much data, and key information is it's easy to overlook, and it's not always clear what data is important, what should I care about, what should I not care about, and you've got a lot of false positives, you've got alert storms, data coming in from all over the place. So subtle issues can very easily go unnoticed. And oftentimes traditional tools out there looking at the issues at an individual object layer, say a certain static threshold that's being crossed. So it might say, okay, well, the CPU utilization of a particular VM is high, or the latency of the I/O latency of a given VM is increasing, but it doesn't often correlate that to how does that impact or relate to all of the other objects in the environment. You might be surprised that what the actual root cause is. So it's historically been up to the administrators to really get to the bottom and figure out what the root cause of this. So for example, let's say you've got a particular application that you virtualized, and all of a sudden it's performing poorly. As David mentioned before, you've got a lot of finger pointing in IT silos, so IT might have to bring together folks from various teams in order to figure out the root cause of the problem. And many of the tools used focus again on specific silos, such as the application or the storage or networking tools. So again, the data is out there, but correlating and fully understanding the data, not only the data, but it's also its meaning and what that what that translates to as far as the real root cause of a problem. And that can certainly be challenging and time-consuming, involving many different parties, and of course that all comes back to cost here. And in most cases, the problem or the root cause of the problem is complex. It's not just one item or object that's the culprit. Oftentimes there's a combination of multiple root causes, and looking at that at the bigger picture is generally beyond the capabilities of today's tools here. So again, it comes back to there's too much data in too many places, and it's challenging to interpret all that data to really get the results that you need and get down to the answers as to what's going on. So this all comes back to noise, right? You've got a lot of noise from the application to the host, the storage, the networking. How do you make sense of that? How do you look for patterns? How do you identify what is considered normal behavior versus an anomaly? So again, all these data sources are coming from lots of different places. It all a lot of noise. It all needs to be understood and analyzed. So what Silas IQ does is we take all the data that we're collecting, in real time here, and we run this through our machine learning engine. So we transform the noise and we perform what we call topological behavior analysis on all of this data. This is where we take into account, both not just the raw data points here, but we're looking at both the shape, and the meaning of the data. So if you look at the right side of the slide, we're taking that raw data, looking at, and analyzing the patterns of data over time. And you can see here we start to form shapes as to what's expected, what are expectancy lines and things like that. Then we take that data and we couple it with the understanding, our understanding of your environment, so the topology and the relationships between all of these objects. So it's really important to understand not just the data and the patterns, but how all this data relates to one another. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to derive patterns, understand anomalies, and take that one step further and make recommendations as a whole. Taking into account all of the various objects in the environment, not just at this point right now, for example, but over time. Learning what's been happening over time, and is that normal or an anomaly? And that just at the end of the day, that provides you with faster and much more accurate solutions to fix the problem that you're experiencing here. So, the outcome of all of this, it really comes down to clarity and simplicity. So with Silas IQ, I'll show you here in a demo in just a moment or two. But we allow you to get down to to identify and fully understand an issue with a single click. We've got a dashboard, a Perk dashboard that lets you drill right down in there, and I'll describe what that looks like here. Our machine learning approach, is fundamentally different from what most tools are doing today. It's focused on knowledge discovery rather than simply, looking at data or metrics reporting. So rather than reporting on, point-in-time status or averages, we're providing knowledge of the infrastructure that, it's extremely valuable in more accurately predicting, simulating, and recommending solutions to what are usually complex problems that arise in your dynamic environments. So you get greater simplicity, greater accuracy. We'll automatically triage the issues, by severity. So maybe a severe issue or just a warning or just purely informational. So you can look and filter based on severities. And it's also, this is very scalable and extensible. So we're not talking about, a small environment where, you've got a couple of hosts and a handful of VMs. This scales up to very large deployments. It's very easy to set up and install. I'll take you through what that looks like here. Basically, it's a virtual appliance that you deploy in the environment and connect it up to your virtual centers and a couple other data sources, and it automatically starts pulling in data and learning about the environment. So moving along here, the dashboard that I mentioned, we call this our Perk dashboard, and Perk stands for performance, efficiency, reliability, and capacity. And what we're doing is we're analyzing a lot of different key metrics for compute, network, and storage along these four dimensions of these four Perk dimensions here. So I'll take you through and show you what the Perk dashboard looks like as we get to the demo. We'll be highlighting a couple of use cases that we supply with the product here right now in the areas of root cause analysis. It's certainly a big benefit of the tool here, but also, as David mentioned before, identifying virtual machines in your environment that might benefit from configuring host-based SSD caching. That's something that's not very intuitive to figure out here. And then also identifying things like resource waste, like idle VMs and VM snapshots. So those are a couple of the areas that I'll be talking about and demoing here today. I've got some slides for each of them. We'll just go through these briefly. I really want to spend most of our time showing this to you in real time. So with our root cause analysis feature, again, this goes back to the constant analysis of the environment and the learning that takes place here. So when we identify anomalies, that will be presented to you very quickly, and you can identify, what's the type of issue, the start and end time, or is it still in progress, who's being impacted by this, what the root cause of the object is, and finally, we'll make a recommendation as to what you can do in order to resolve the issue here. So that's all single screen, single click, gets right to the bottom of the issue here. So we'll show you this in more depth in the demo. So with the host-based caching feature, so what we're actually doing here is we're looking at the I/O of each virtual machine here and pulling information about which data store it's in, even down to the virtual disk that's would benefit from caching that virtual disk, to the I/O stats, current and predicted IOPS, current and predicted latency, but also the very specific recommended cache size as well as the cache block size. So without the historical way of doing this was you'd use just a general rule of thumb. You'd say, okay, I'm going to allocate 20% of the size of the disk, and that's going to be my cache size, and maybe go 32K block. But that will work for some applications, but it's not a solution for everything, right? So you want to be able to identify uniquely, how to optimally configure the cache, even down to the virtual disk level. So that's something that Silas IQ can do here for you very easily, without you having to do anything. You just click on the screen, and it will pop up a list of all the candidate virtual machines here. We also have a feature where we'll analyze your environment and figure out not only which virtual machines we consider idle relative to everything else in the environment, but also the potential cost savings. So you can assign weights to, the cost of CPU, disk, and memory and things like that, and we'll tell you, what you could potentially save if you, decommission or delete the virtual machines here. And then finally, VM snapshots. So, it's easy to have snapshots sprawl all over the place. So that's not only going to, use, important resources on, on your data stores, but also can have a performance impact, to your overall VM health here. So Silas IQ makes it very easy through a single screen. We'll tell you, all the different snapshots, as well as, information about the snapshots, even down to, how many sibling snapshots are right there. So you no longer have to go kind of VM by VM and drill down and dig into this information here. So, just to recap on Silas IQ, and then I'm going to start sharing out a live environment here. But Silas IQ is a very simple product to install. It's an OVA file you can download, load it into your vSphere environment, go through a simple setup wizard, and you are good to go. It's going to start immediately pulling in data, hundreds of thousands of data points. It's going to pull data from, from Virtual Center, from your ESX host, things like that, even up into the application space. And immediately it's going to start, learning the patterns and the trends of what it sees from a compute, storage, and network perspective, even application perspective, and start to learn again what is normal behavior, what's an anomaly, and highlight those things for you, in a single glance here. Again, the host-based caching analysis feature is very powerful. It will tell you exactly which virtual machines will benefit from enabling an SSD host-based cache, and what we predict the performance benefit will be here. And then, of course, the VM resource optimization, about identifying idle VMs and eliminating snapshot waste. So those are some of the key features. And with that, let me switch gears here, and I'm going to start sharing out a live environment here. So one thing that I really haven't mentioned so far is that this interface can be accessed from multiple different places. It's very simple to use, as you'll see here in just a moment, but it's a touch enabled interface. So you've got a tablet you want to use, you can use that on the go. I'm just happen to be connecting from a tab in my web browser here. So what I've done to this point is I've pointed my web browser at Silas IQ. In this tab, I'm going to show you the features that we have here in the currently available product, and also as a sneak peek for those of you who either will be or won't be at VMworld here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to give you a sneak preview of some new features that we'll be demoing and announcing there at VMworld as well, specifically around the topological behavior analysis and a new topology map view that we're launching, which is very exciting here. So back to the current demo. So when we log in, we're presented right here with the Perk dashboard. Now, what I did to get this all set up is I went in here to manage, and basically I defined what we call an environment. This is where you point Silas IQ at one or more virtual centers in the environment, provide various credentials, some host credentials if needed, things like that. And right there off the bat, you can see all the virtual machines in your environment. We'll look at all the hosts in the environment. You can see lots of different information about them all at a single glance here. And then also information about the data stores. So once you've defined your environments, again, Silas IQ will instantly start to pull in data and start to analyze the data here. Now, once it's done that, we go back to the Perk dashboard. And again, we have these 4 columns, along P, E, R, and C dimensions here. And if I scroll down, I can see that we drill down into the Perk matrix, and we've got the different tiers. So we've got kind of this grid where first I've got different compute information about host CPU utilization and CPU ready time, host memory utilization over time, idle virtual CPU waste, stats on live migrations and host uptime. We've got a section for storage as well as for network. This can be filtered as well. You can filter it down to a subset of your environment. You can also look at different date ranges, so 7 days, 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, things like that. But right at the top of the screen, we highlight issues that are going on here. We've categorized them by critical, warning, and information. So what I'm going to show you next is, Silas IQ has identified that, okay, you've got a critical performance issue going on. So I can click this and it'll take me right down to that, or I can just go here to performance root cause. So let's take a look and see what Silas IQ has identified. And you've got various issues. You can sort by start time, end time, issue type, and things like that. If I look at a particular issue, so here's a critical issue that we've identified. And if you look here in the tab on the section on the right, I can see lots of information all on a single screen. I've got a couple tabs I'll take you through here. But this is an application. We've identified a storage contention issue that's affecting my application. It's a latency issue, storage layer, and the environment, aka the virtual center that it's affecting, is my prod site 1 virtual center. I can see the start and end time, the duration, and right here I can see the root cause. So there were 2 virtual machines that are listed here right on the screen. These are essentially the noisy neighbors, right? So down below we make a recommendation that says, okay, well, you might want to rebalance this. You might want to vMotion the virtual machine to another host. You might want to move it to a different data store. But these are the culprits that are causing the issue. Now, if I want to see what's being impacted and what these 2 noisy neighbor virtual machines are negatively impacting, I can go over here and take a look at the impact analysis tab. And it's going to give me a broader view, and it'll tell me, okay, so that's, it's impacting my data store, but it's also impacting this other virtual machine as well. So we're looking at all of these objects as a whole and telling you, both what the root cause as well as the, the impacted objects are. So this is, a simple example where I've got a couple of virtual machines that are impacting, a data store and a virtual machine, but, in much, larger environments, it could be, lots of different impacted objects, lots of different root causes, and we'll make those appropriate recommendations here. If we look at the symptoms tab, here we can see the information over time. So this is, we've highlighted here in blue what we've identified as the anomaly here. So you can see for this period of time, the latency really spiked up here. So, and this is dynamic, so you can drill in if I want to look at this in more granular detail. I can hover my mouse and see over specific times what the latency was at any given time here. So let's the root cause. Again, we've automatically identified an anomaly in the environment. In this case, it was storage latency anomaly here. We've, in a single screen, we've told you, the type of issue, what the root cause of the issue is, and some recommendations. So a simple example here. Now, going back to performance, so now you've got a virtual machine. It's not performing well. It's an I/O issue. Well, this is where the host-based caching feature can come into play. So again, if I go back to the Perk dashboard, there's a couple different ways you can get to the different screens. One way here is, I can just click on host-based caching, or if I look here at the different graphs, I can see here, that my workload has been changing over time. So, virtual machines might need host-based caching for some period of time, and then, they might, that could change. So this is just kind of showing you those trends over time. You can also drill down on any of these charts, or you can click over, and it'll take you to the appropriate dashboard. So here, I could have also just clicked host-based caching. So here, what we're showing you is that we've identified 2 virtual machines right here. Again, one of these was a noisy neighbor that was causing problems for others. So this is, that makes sense to be a great candidate to offload some of the I/O into an SSD cache. So we're going to tell you not only which virtual machine would benefit from this, but also which data store and virtual disk we're making that recommendation for. The read ratio here, the predicted cache hit ratio, current IOPS, what we predict that the IOPS will improve by enabling the cache. Same goes for latency, current latency and predicted latency. And then probably most importantly, we're making the recommendation as to exactly how much SSD cache you need to allocate for that particular virtual disk and what the ideal cache block size should be. So this really takes the guesswork out and the guess and check out of having to analyze all this data yourself, having to kind of do guess and check and turn on cache and figure out later, well, that didn't really fix my problem, for maybe a number of different reasons, or maybe you didn't configure the cache properly or something to that effect here. So this gives you, very accurate, very precise recommendations on what needs to be done. Just briefly, I'm going to talk to the idle VMs and snapshots as well. So here, if I take a look at idle VMs, Here we're going to show you the different idle VMs, the potential monthly cost savings, and information about them, number of CPUs, memory, and information about the average CPU, I/O, and network utilization. So here I can see on all these virtual machines, it's all very, very low here. So this, these might be virtual machines that somebody left running. Maybe they were test dev virtual machines. And maybe you can just delete them. Maybe if they were running, maybe power them off, things of that nature. And then finally, if we look at the virtual machine snapshots, so here within a single screen, I can see all the different snapshots. I can see the size, the data store, how utilized that data store is, also how old the snapshot is. You can see if these are fresh ones or if they're stale, and then also how many snapshot siblings they have. So if you have a lot of nested snapshots, that can negatively impact your I/O performance here. So maybe you want to delete or kind of flatten down some of these. Maybe you don't want to delete a particular snapshot, but maybe you want to flatten and merge some of them together so you don't have a snapshot with 20-something siblings here. So it gives you a bird's eye view as to how you can optimize your snapshot configuration as well. So that's the demo of what we have in the the currently generally available product here. Another thing I do want to mention is that not only is this easy to install, it's a single OVA file that you go and you connect up, point at your virtual center servers and your ESX hosts, but it's also very easy to maintain and update. So we release new features regularly. So by clicking on this, you can basically manage updates with the click of a button. It'll tell you what updates are available. You can even do a self-update in place. No reconfiguration, no manual work required. It'll perform everything it covers, and then you've got the latest greatest features. So we're constantly evolving the product, adding in new features over time, and you can as long as you keep running the product, you can stay up to date with all the latest and greatest here. So what I'm going to show you next is I'm going to switch to another tab here in my browser and actually provide you with a kind of the first public sneak peek of some upcoming features that we're adding into Silas IQ. So you also notice that we've changed the look and feel a little bit of the Perk dashboard here to make it a little streamlined. But let's see here. What I'm going to show you is the new, what we call our topology map here. So this is a powerful new feature because if I switch over here, we have this great new view. So this is showing me all of the different objects in the environment. I can see all the different relationships. You can hover over. But it's also highlighting that here right at the top that I've got various issues. So I've got a critical issue, I've got 5 warnings, and I've got a couple of informational issues. So here, if I just look around, I can zoom out and zoom in. Oh, I've got this red, cluster of objects over here. So let's zoom in and see what's taking a look. So again, this is, not just, hey, I've got an issue here, but this is really the shape of the data, the relationship between the different objects. So here I can see that I've got, these red ones these are the ones that are being affected by this particular issue. And here I've got a data store. This data store is being impacted. Here I've got some impacted virtual machines. And then the ones that have the blinking icon here right now, these are the objects that are, the root cause. So what's nice about this is if I click on the object right here in the topology map, it'll actually take me directly over to the performance root cause screen, and it'll highlight the issue that is related to that particular object. So again, here, this is another storage contention issue that's, it's a latency issue. And I can see that, yep, there are 2 root cause objects that maps to what we saw on the graph here. And we also updated the impact analysis screen. And we've got this new view where we'll show you again, this is a subset of the overall topology map. And these are just the objects that are related to this particular incident here. And if you want to go back to the original view, you can just click on impact topology and it'll switch and it'll show you that table. We can see the different objects and what the type is and if they're impacted or not and things like that. Then again, we can have the symptoms tab where not only now will we show you the values over time and where we saw the anomaly, but we've also added this expectancy line. So this is based on the behavior of the environment and what we've learned, this is what we expected the latency to be. and that can change over time. But the problem was because we saw these values that went way above this expectancy line. So this is the anomaly that we've identified. So with that, let me stop. Actually, I'll go back to the slide here. So that concludes the demo portion here. We've got about 15 minutes left of the session. We want to make sure there's plenty of time for Q&A. And then I guess, David, do you want to do the raffle and that kind of stuff right now?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, excellent demo, Tony. Thanks very much. I'm really impressed with the visualization, actually. It's the first time I've seen that, so some really cool stuff there. Yeah, we've selected randomly someone who registered for the webinar, and the webinar winner, the registrant winner of the $300 Amazon, actually it is an Amazon gift card. I'm sorry, I used the wrong graphic there. It's a $300 Amazon gift card, not an Apple gift card. But I tell you what, if you have a preference, I'll send you either one. It is Tammy, who is from California. So congratulations, Tammy H, for being on the call and for winning the gift card. And thanks to ScienceIQ for sponsoring that prize. And with that, I guess let's go ahead and go to our Q&A. And we can just stay on this slide where you can learn more about ScienceIQ. Of course, you can go to the ScienceIQ booth at VMworld, booth number 1946. ScienceIQ is going to participate in a panel discussion at VMworld around the software-defined storage infrastructure pertaining to Flash. And then if you're not at VMworld, or either way, you can visit the ScienceIQ website, or you can email them for more info and follow them on Twitter. ScienceIQ will be sending an email after the webinar with a link to download a full 30-day trial of the product that you just saw Tony demonstrate. So watch out for that very valuable email. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into some questions, if you don't mind, from the audience, Tony.
Sure.
Yeah, let's see here. The first one is related to hypervisors. I know we had the hypervisor poll question of what hypervisors people were using. What hypervisors does ScienceIQ support at this time?
Sure, great question. So today we support vSphere, so the VMware platform here specifically. That's the only one we're supported this time, and in the future, we do have plans to add support for other virtualization platforms as well. But for now, we're looking at just vSphere deployments, and based on the poll, I think we saw that 91 or 90 something% of folks out there were running VMware, so that's where we decided to start here.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's smart. Second question is, what's the licensing model for this?
Sure, no problem. So it's basically it's licensed on a per host basis, so an ESX host basis. It's not per core or anything like that. So it's per host, and it's a subscription model.
Very nice. So if a company has some crazy number of cores and sockets in a host, they just still pay for the single host. So that's
yeah, exactly. So if they had a a vSphere deployment with a couple of virtual centers, and they had 50 different hosts, that's just one per host basically.
Very nice, very nice. And then one of the questions from the audience is about what's the scalability of the tool? How large of an environment can it monitor? And before you answer that, one of the things I've noticed about this product in comparison to other tools is it takes a very high level approach. So correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but the product is designed for a company that has many different data centers and many different vCenter hosts, like right from the start. That's the design of the tool.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Yeah, this wasn't designed for little small shops and to stop there. We're talking about enterprises with multiple virtual center deployments with hundreds and thousands of virtual machines. We saw here in my demo, I had 3 virtual centers connected. So I mean, you can have any number of what we call environments, and we'll pull all that data in and start to analyze that. So there's not a specific hard limit, but we're talking up into the thousands of virtual machines and growing.
Okay, excellent. Another question is, how often does it pull data from vCenter or ESX hosts?
Sure, good question. So we're actually, for a lot of things, we're actually pulling 5 minutes, but we're pulling much more granular data than that. We're pulling data basically as granular as vSphere itself will provide. And I believe currently that's data in like 20-second increments here. So while we pull at a certain frequency, what's really important is the granularity of the data that we're pulling, and we analyze the data at that much more granular level here to give you, the accurate recommendations.
Right, right. So in vCenter, as an admin, you can control how the sampling rate, of the data and how long that data is kept. But then you all have the option to pull that data as frequently, I guess, as you choose to get more detail based on the sampling rate.
Yeah, and all that data gets, extracted from Virtual Center, from the ESX hosts and things like that, and yeah, it all gets stored in our Silas IQ product, which is it's a virtual appliance.
Okay. And to me, one of the questions that popped into my mind earlier was, and I think I already know the answer, but I think the audience might be interested in it, is if I'm connected to vCenter, why do I need to connect to an ESXi host as well?
Sure. So the connection to the host is specifically around the host-based caching feature. So we're actually collecting information from like vSCSI stats to get the low-level IO information from the host, and that's how we're able to make the accurate recommendations on which virtual machines would benefit from host-based caching. So yeah, if you didn't want to provide the credentials to the host itself, then yeah, it wouldn't make those types of recommendations. So it's really up to you as to what features you want to enable versus not.
Right, right. But I think that's a real differentiator with this product compared to other products that I've seen, is that it does have the ability to pull from vSCSI stats, storage I/O performance on a per VMDK level, and analyze that and then make recommendations on that, and that's really really unique.
Yeah, and also, we don't stop there. We even go up in the application stack. So, for example, we can, leverage WMI and pull information about, SQL Server running inside your virtual machine. So now we can correlate, not just what's happening at the storage layer, network, at the hypervisor layer, but also, even up into the application. So, it just makes it that much more powerful, so that we can, get an even broader picture and analyze more objects and how all these things relate to each other. So.
Very nice, very nice. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? Is it, if you have a disaster recovery site, is that still just covered as you just license it based on the number of hosts that are in the?
Yeah, so you just decide, which virtual centers you want to connect it to and which ones you don't. So, if you had a DR site, maybe you didn't want, because it's kind of sitting there passively. Maybe you didn't want that to be analyzed. You just wouldn't go into ScienceIQ and define that as an environment. So.
Okay, okay. And I know you talked a little bit about the availability of this. Is the 30-day evaluation version that the attendees will receive a license to via email, that will soon also be available on the website for those who are attending or maybe watching this recording later?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see, Tony, any other points you want to make about the product or questions you want to answer that are in the queue?
Let's see here. I think we've covered. Most of the questions here. Certainly if there's some questions about do we have presence in other locations? So we have global presence here. So we've got folks all around the world that can help you out with this. I would say that if you do have more follow-up questions, we're coming up to the top of the hour here. Use the the alias up here. You can go to info@usdefense.com. Visit us on our website. You can fill out a form, submit a question, and a representative can get in touch with you to answer questions. Even fire up if you want to do a follow-up WebEx session and get a demo of this to your team. Then also if you we'll follow up with an email about your trial software of this. But if you want to get a copy in house to try it out, you go to the website and you can request that as well. So glad to engage with folks as we can and help you learn more about the solution going forward as well too.
Excellent, excellent. And that's a great point. That reminds me about the tool, actually, to try out the product in your own data center. I've downloaded it and deployed it in under 5 minutes, really, and gotten it gotten it up and running and connected to vCenter, all in just, that 5 to 10 minute period. So it's super easy to deploy and get up and running. So that's one thing I love about tools like this that are designed and deployed in this virtual appliance. Very easily deployed format. So thanks so much, Tony. Congratulations on the launch of your big new product and the debut, coming up at VMworld. Thanks for the excellent demo, and thanks for being featured on our webinar today.
Great. Thank you so much for hosting us. Thanks everyone for attending, and for those of you at VMworld, please stop by our booth. We've got booth 1946. Come say hello. See our demo. We're going to have a Silas IQ up on a big, nice 70-inch touchscreen panel, so you can come and play with the product in real time.
I'll see you there. Thanks, Tony.
Great.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone. Bye-bye.